I can spot a mile off an award entry that's been retrofitted, where they're trying to pull those effectiveness scores together. Oh, it had some reach and some, opportunities to see, and here's some sentiments. Like, that wasn't part of the original scope.
If someone is feeling unfulfilled or overwhelmed, and obviously you've spoken with hundreds of different guests on your podcast, so you'll have a kind of a unique perspective. Where should people start if they are feeling overwhelmed?
Why are you feeling overwhelmed? Like, what is it that's going on within you? Because it's never, as I always say, it's never what we're doing, it's why we're doing it. What is the thing that's happening within you that's driving you to do too much? Because that's really the level of personal understanding that we need to have.
Welcome back to Embracing Marketing Mistakes, the podcast where, you guessed it, we help you embrace the power of making mistakes and using our learnings to develop as marketing professionals. I'm your host, Chris Norton, and I'm excited to introduce Abigail Dixon, the founder of The Whole Marketer, a community offering holistic support for marketers. That's in the form of a podcast, a book, and workshop. Abigail has worked with leading brands, becoming a celebrated author, launched her own consultancy, and discovered her personal why along the way. A passion for helping marketers discover themselves fully, so they can align their personal values with the work to avoid that nasty burnout. This episode will see us discuss the concept of the whole marketer and how Abigail noticed this was something vital that was missing from the industry. It wouldn't be Embracing Marketing Mistakes without the mistake, so she'll also be here to tell us about a strapline that went horribly wrong. So, as always, sit back, relax, and let's hear about the person behind the marketer and how to bring the two closer together to help you fully realize your potential. Enjoy. Hi, Abby. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No, you're absolutely great to have you on. So we were just talking before we started recording about when you started your own podcast, because you've got your own podcast, right? So we don't meet loads of people who've got their own podcast. There is millions of them out there. Do you want to tell us why you started yours?
So it was the pandemic, and I was starting to do my book research for the Whole Marketer book. And I thought to myself, how do I get other people's voices, not just mine and my opinion about the challenges that marketers are facing or the way in which they've approached it? How do I also get others' voices into the book? And so what's more natural for me than writing, which just sounds odd for someone who's written a book, is to talk, to have a chat. And so that's where the podcast started. It started as podcast research, ability to get that content out there a lot sooner than the book was coming to market. And here we are 130 odd episodes later.
130 episodes. We've done about 70 and it's exhausting.
That's impressive. That's really impressive.
Yeah. And so out of all your guests, who's been the best, would you say? What's been the most insightful?
I always use a benchmark, which is if after I've done the recording, I'm busting to tell someone of the conversation I've just had. So there's been a few people that I personally always wanted to speak to. So like Marg Joplin is an example. Mm-hmm. But Emily Chang stands out in my mind. She's a lady who wrote a book called The Spare Room. Right. And talks about social legacy. And yeah, that one was just so powerful. Just her own personal story, how she's used it in her leadership style, how she brings it to life in her day-to-day, how she's almost used that as the principles for her life and she shares that with others. So the ones that make me almost want to go and bust and tell someone straight away afterwards are the ones that I always really remember.
And what's the secret to that kind of longevity? I mean, I read a stat earlier today saying something like 60 to 80% of podcasts don't make it beyond 3 episodes. So you've kind of smashed the 100 mark. What is the secret to that kind of longevity?
That's a really great question. I think the why you're doing it. In fact, I was talking with another podcaster yesterday, and the why you do it, because as you guys know, it is hard work. It's hard work to think about the guests, the planning, the organization, the reaching out, the scoping of questions, the recording itself, the editing, the promotion, like all of it is hard work. I think as long as it's connected to something that is deep within you, the motivation to keep going will stand its test of time. And for me, it pays to most of my values. So my values are connection, growth, generosity, helping others, and honesty. And quite frankly, it plays to all of them. So for me, there's a personal motivation as well to keep going. And the reason behind why I'm doing it, which is to help marketers have more successful, more fulfilling careers. So, I know it helps so many. The feedback that I get, that was really powerful. I'm going to use that. I'm going to send that to, I hadn't thought of it like that. I'm looking for a job that was really great on my, whatever their challenge is. I know it helps so many. And I think that's, for me, is the other reason that keeps me going.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's a lot more work than what people envisage. You find people do 5 episodes or 10 episodes, don't you? And then they stop because of the sheer volume and volume of work that you've got to do to make a podcast work. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into marketing then, and what you've done over your career? Because you've had some interesting roles. I was looking through it, and you've even worked at Burger King, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn there? Other than Whoppers are amazing.
I mean, Whoppers are the king.
Yeah.
They are king, and Whoppers are great. And I got to eat a lot of Whoppers. Whoppers with cheese, no onion was always my order because you can make it your way.
Okay.
But yes. So what got me into marketing? I mean, psychology, really. It was very much like the love of people, the interest of business. And that's what kind of started me on the marketing path. And I've worked on a whole host of different brands and businesses across multiple sectors. So, started out in government, working for the British Council, and spent some time agency side before then moving into a lot more consumer-facing goods brands like Bosch and Fisher, the DIY retail brand, before then moving into the holy grail of FMCG, where I've worked at Premier Foods, I know, Premier Foods and Britvic and Burger King, where I headed up the marketing function for UK and Ireland, before then moving into consultancy. So spent kind of 15 years client side. One thing that was also a little side hustle at the time was I used to do training. So after I did my postgrad for the CIM, I then became a trainer. And so I also used to do training at the weekends and one evening a week. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Loved the challenge of having loads of different students in the room from different backgrounds, different industries, different brands at different stages on their own journey, doing their assignment, applying the learnings. It would challenge me to think about different industries and sectors that I wasn't part of. And yeah, absolutely loved that. So kind of when I got to a bit of a career crossroads of kind of what next, consultancy training was definitely going to be part of the future. So being able to draw on my personal wealth of experience, the experience of all the companies that I've trained and all of the students that I had at that time before then kind of setting up Labyrinth and then now the whole marketer.
So you went off and wrote a book. Did you write the book during the pandemic then? Or did you write the book? Did the pandemic have an effect on you writing the book? Because a lot of books were written during the pandemic, right?
I don't know who else wrote a book in the pandemic, but if I'm honest, the pandemic made things easier.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when you're in the process of writing a book, you kind of scope out what the book is, what it's about, the chapters, the outline, you have to write a sample chapter, like all of that happened before the pandemic and, securing a publisher, someone who also believed in your book and your concept. Then the pandemic happened. So actually, although at the time I was thinking, how am I going to do this with my day job, which was, consultancy and training and coaching and mentoring. And a lot of that work stopped because people at the time were used to only having training face-to-face or so my workload lessened. And although that has its own personal panic, it did open up a bit more free time for me. And also the personal time that I would have spent going out and about and seeing friends and what have you also went. So a lot of evenings, a lot of weekends, a lot of time every day. It actually gave me more headspace and more time to write the book.
And so what's this sort of overarching theme of the book that you're trying to teach marketers? What are you trying to give them to take away from it? What's the underlying message?
I think the underlying, there's many underlying messages. I think, why did I write the book? I think maybe we start there.
Yeah.
I wrote the book because I had a Jerry Maguire moment. I was on a sun lounger in Cyprus on holiday, and I was reflecting on the 2 weeks that had gone by. And in those 2 weeks, I had done a whole host of different work, as I do still to this day: coaching, training, mentoring, consulting, capability work. And every marketer I spoke to was fed up. Like, every marketer was feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, it was a lot. And as someone who's really passionate about the marketing profession, I was just like, that's not okay. Like, that's really not okay, and not where I want marketers to be. So I thought, well, what can I do to help? And I thought, well, I can give them clarity, because that's one of the things they were saying. It's changed so much from being a support function to one leading the agenda. Like, what are the skills that I need today? It's massively changed. Like, a lot of marketers are coming from a comms background and now we're having to lead commercial agendas, or maybe more specialist skills, and what lacks some of the commercial skills that are required, or maybe insight mining skills. So clarity on the technical skills. Let me give you that. Let me give you the clarity on what good looks like, what you should be looking for, the ability to kind of assess your own skills so you know what gaps to develop. But how do I also help you face into the reality of the role, which a lot of it is leadership. It's leading projects and campaigns and bringing things to life, which takes a whole different set of human skills and leadership skills that we may or may not possess. And so let me share with you some of the soft or human skills that I have seen great marketers possess around curiosity and empathy and bravery. But also let me share with you what it means to be a marketing leader today, what it looks like to define your leadership style, what it looks like practically to lead a team, to give you some of those tools and toolkits to do that. And then last but by no means least, how do I help you stop the overwhelm and feel more fulfilled? Which was, in order to feel more fulfilled, having that personal understanding about who you are and what you bring to the world, the confidence and of ownership of who you are and what you bring to the world, the ability to understand yourself on a much deeper level than kind of any personality profiling test anyone's done around your values, your purpose, what drives you, what motivates you, but also face into like, what's holding you back? What's stopping you from achieving your goals? What are your goals? Because I believe that fulfillment comes when we're doing two things: when we're either A, edging closer to our goals, or B, we're doing something that plays to our values. A bit like your earlier question, why should you carry on with the podcast? Well, because it's something that plays to all my values. So it motivates me. And, how do we take action? How do we take action to take ownership for our lives and careers as a whole? Because we bring our whole self to work. And so that's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to help marketers have more empowerment, to be able to take the reins of their careers, to feel that they are clear on what they need today to grow their brands and businesses of tomorrow to be successful, but actually, more importantly, they can feel more fulfilled in their jobs.
That theme of fulfillment I find quite interesting because, marketing is a very hectic career, isn't it? And it's quite easy to get sort of demotivated at times and completely overwhelmed. And although this might sound like a bit of a glib question, is there kind of a starting point for people to kind of if someone is feeling unfulfilled or overwhelmed? And obviously you've spoken with hundreds of different guests on your podcast, so you'll have a kind of a unique perspective. Are you able to kind of distill all of those episodes down into a few sort of lessons, or where should people start if they are feeling overwhelmed?
I think I always say personal exercise, regardless of kind of what's in the book, is I always start with a white sheet of paper. So I take a white sheet of paper and I write everything down that's in my head. And that could be work related, that could be emotional concerns, that could be mental load, everything from, is there going to be a packed lunch to next week for my son's school trip? I mean, literally that's something live at the moment. We don't do packed lunches, so I'm going to have to think about packed lunch. Like everything that's in my head down on a sheet of paper, and start to think about what's in my control, what's not in my control, what's within my influence, and then the ability to prioritize or deprioritize or ask for help from others. And I think being able to have those tools in your toolkit to be able to take ownership of where you are when you are feeling overwhelmed is really important. But also the reflection and self-discovery to think about, why are you feeling overwhelmed? Like, what is it that's going on within you? Because it's never, as I always say, it's never what we're doing, it's why we're doing it. So what is the thing that's happening within you that's driving you to do too much, take on too much, have to do too much, worry too much? Because that's really the level of personal understanding that we need to have. So, what's the driver within you? Is it people pleaser? Is it being brave? Is it being strong? Are you asking for help? Are you not? What's the thing that's happening within you? Is it you trying to prove something to someone? Are you feeling insecure in a certain situation? Like, it's always, for me, the breadcrumbing. It's always, using what's happening to you and how you're feeling to have the level of personal reflection to try and think and work out why. And I think that's very important. And, can I distill all of the episodes down into key themes? No, is the honest answer, because everyone is individual. But what I would say is, if two common questions I always ask the guests are, what are your career highs and lows? And what one piece of advice would you give? And usually the one piece of advice is always a message of empowerment, a message of like, keep going or do this thing or something that really gives the motivation, because marketing is so challenging yet so rewarding. It's great that we are leading the long-term commercial agenda of businesses, but with that comes accountability and responsibility. And so, what is it that we're doing and we are building into our lives as a whole to give us the resilience and the energy we need to deal with that is so important. And I think with the career highs and lows, I think the common themes that if I was to, on the spot there, Will, think about what those common themes are about those lows, I would say it's usually when they don't feel supported, when a course direction has changed that they're not aligned with, when there's been difficulties with the people that they work with. They are all usually human related. They're not necessarily the technicalities of the job. And most of the career highs is when they were getting to do something that really resonated and aligned with them. Whether that was a brand, whether that was a project, whether that was the people they worked with, those were the themes that always come through.
And is marketing, is marketing worse than other careers, do you think, in terms of perhaps the stresses on people in the industry, the lack of fulfillment at times, or is this an issue every kind of sector faces?
It's a great question. I think I can comment on marketing. I think we have got more accountability and responsibility than we've ever done for the right reasons, but the reality of what that feels like on our shoulders is a different ball game. We are drawn into the politics of having to get everyone aligned, from board level all the way through to our teams, the agency partners that we work with. That takes a lot of emotional energy. Probably, I would say there's other roles out there, maybe a politician, other people that are looking for alignment internally, maybe people that are running finance or, I don't know, sales divisions, but I think it more so with marketers, and the fact that we have to embrace the wider organizations. We're having to have conversations with all of those other functions as well. I think the breadth, the role, the changes of the role have changed a lot. I don't know if I can think of any other profession that's changed quite as much. So, if you think about maybe an accountant as an example, I would make the assumption, as I'm not one, that the way, yes, sometimes taxation changes, or the way in which your profit and loss account, or the way in which you account, those things stay fairly consistent, I would assume. Whereas, and your responsibility around that, your reporting, your accounting, your taxation laws, some flexes here and there. But for marketing, our breadth of role has changed, right? So if I think about when I came into marketing some almost 25 years ago now, I was very much in the support function, working in the PR and comms space, and our product or service was brought to us and we were asked to communicate it. And now we're asked to create it and develop it and bring it to market and communicate it and be responsible and accountable for its commercial and financial performance, and measure that and track that and have the learnings and bring them back in and do that all over again. And someone on my podcast once said, marketing is like pushing a boulder up the hill for it to roll back down and then have to not have a break before you have to push it back up again. And I think it is. I think
that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds very familiar.
I had such a hard relay with that, because it's like we get that thing to market, we see it on shelf, or we go and experience this service or whatever it is that we're bringing to market. And then, you go back to camp after one day and someone's like, right, next year, next project. And all the pain and difficulties that come with getting the alignment and making that thing happen, and dealing with the setbacks and thinking about different ways in which you're going to bring that to market, because the way that which you plan, as I always say, writing the strategy is one thing, but making it happen is a whole nother ball game. And all the setbacks that we experience along the way, nothing's ever a linear line. So I think there is definitely a need for resilience, probably more so than a lot of other corporate professions, I would say. But the speed of change and the way in which we change, I'm not sure what other professions I would compare it to. What many of us have learned no longer remains valid in some instances. If you think about how I was taught consumers make decisions, or maybe how consumers did make decisions, 25 years ago around this linear line, and we would plan our communications around that. That's not the world that we're operating in, whether that's with the technology, because of the understanding we now have about how humans make decisions, and behavioral science and psychological drivers and the emotion and the way in which we engage and what consumers like. All of it's changing all the time.
Do you think marketers get the respect they deserve as a career? Because you're right, the pace of change has never been quicker. There's so many different facets of the role. You're highly accountable. It's absolutely relentless in some cases. Is it seen as a highly respected career choice? Because it should be, really, shouldn't it?
I think it should be. I think it depends on the organisation and the orientation of the organisation. If it's a truly consumer market-led organisation, then I think they do. I think if you're very much sales-led, they know that you're important, but you're working alongside. If you're production-led, maybe they don't see the full potential of what marketing truly is, and therefore don't get the full respect. But I do think that is part of the role, is marketing having to educate the wider business on what it can do when given the opportunity. And, we were talking about the pandemic earlier, and a lot of people have often said to me, obviously I work with businesses and brands across multiple sectors, all the way from pharmaceuticals to food and drink brands. And I think a lot of businesses who weren't market orientated were waiting for their chance. And what the pandemic gave them was like the door got opened ajar. It was almost like, we don't know what else to do. We think we might ask marketing and they might be able to tell us or help us pivot. And almost like we're able to prove that, we can think about things that we can do differently in order to turn this business around, or deal with the here and now of the way in which we bring our products and services to market. And, I know some people have really kicked that door down. They're like, thanks for the ajar. I'll take that whole lot. Thank you very much. Now I'll come in and show you. But, I think the respect is dependent on the orientation and a good job that the marketer is doing explaining the benefits. And, we've still got a long way to go. To say we're done is an understatement. But we are definitely, having the seat at the board and working with the chief financial officer and, proving the investment and having the right conversations at the table, which, we didn't see 10 years ago.
What is it you do? So in your job at the moment then, so you've got your podcast, you've got your consultancy business. What takes up the majority of your time then? And what sort of, you said there that you work with numerous different types of sectors. Because I was going to say, like when I looked at your career history, I was like, you've worked in loads of different sectors, which has kept it quite interesting. So like, which are your favourite, and what are you sort of doing with them today in 2025? What sort of stuff do you do with clients now?
So a lot of the work I do with clients now is really the ones that I work in partnership with, because of course I do a lot of talks and workshops and inspirational sessions and keynotes, that really kind of give marketers a G up or to think differently about how they develop their career or whatever that may be. The clients that we work in partnership with, they're on a transformation journey. So they are looking at what is the role that marketing is playing within our organization. What's the vision of where we want to take our marketing, back to what we were saying about the orientation. What is it that business expects? Where do we want to communicate it could get to? to then think about, so how do we bring that to life? And how do we give our marketers the clarity on where we're heading as a business, the role that they're playing within that for their brand or the business in their care, the skills, and clarity around the skills that they need to deliver that, the training, the development programs, but more so for me than just one and done, the one coming in and training and done, because that's not what drives competency shifts. What drives competency shifts is looking at, the common request we always get in the profession is like, can you come in and help us write better briefs, right? And it's like, yeah, we can tell you the process of, here's a template and here's what needs to go in it. But if you haven't got the insight and you haven't got the clarity about what it is that the wider business is doing, and you're not clear on the strategy, therefore you're not clear on what the role of comms is, and you haven't got insight beyond the assumptions that you're putting into it, and you're not using the learnings from your past campaigns to communicate to your new agency, and you're not giving this the amount of time it needs and setting clear KPIs that everyone, I could go on, and you haven't got the KPI budget to even track those things, there's everything else that sits around it. And I think for me, training is more powerful when you've addressed the root cause issue as to why someone is doing what they're doing, and you are able to change that process, look at the inputs, look at how they're going to get that and navigate the ways of working or the process to do that. But most importantly, giving them the support. No one in this world goes on a 2-day training course and comes out an expert, right? No. So it's about going, so what's the support beyond? Are there going to be mentors? Are there going to be people they can rely on internally? Or is that going to be us and our team? We'll still be here for you to check that brief once you've written it, give you some additional builds, be there to help as like a buddy to make sure that we're stress testing the work that's being done, until you get to the point where it is best in class, and then you can use it as an example and help others. So that's a bit more about the way in which we would train and upskill, very much more for the longevity than for the quick here and now.
Well, that's quite an interesting issue you've touched on there. The idea of kind of learning fade, the fact that, and we do an awful lot of training at Prohibition as well. And we have various strategies to avoid that. People are very enthused, aren't they, when they have the training, they get it, then their real life takes over. Suddenly it's Monday morning and they don't, and unless you work hard to avoid that, they don't really implement anything. Have you got any kind of tips or advice in terms of how people can avoid that kind of phenomenon of learning fade after they've invested in training?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing is, why are they on the training course? The driving course. So I train both in company, so companies that I'm working with, but I also train on open courses for lots of different industry bodies, and I can tell who wants to be there, who's put their name up, who wants to be on that training course, who's owning their career, who knows his development area or something of interest that they need to know more about in their job, and they are, reaching out, right? The ownership is on them. They are there with a pen ready, versus the person that's been put on the training course. So I think it is really, first thing is almost like understanding the level of motivation for why it's required, what that's going to mean to the individual if they've been put on the course, and how you can almost communicate the importance of it. So that when they do come in, they are there, they're wanting this, they want to be part of the journey, want to be fully engaged. I think the other key thing is the senior buy-in. So I work with lots of senior leaders who want to, step change performance of the team. It comes to training day, they've noticed these capability gaps within their team. They know that the outputs will be better as a result of it, but then they somehow can't make the time on the day. And look, don't get me wrong, I understand the pressure of a senior role. I've had them myself, right? But then they're not there on the day. Or the problem with that is then they're not part of the upskilling. They're not using the same vernacular that the team is using. They haven't seen the challenges as to why someone can't do that thing in the room. And so even if they can't be there on the day, like, what is it that they are doing to upskill themselves to be I love the learning fade. I'm going to use that, like the learning gear-upper, afterwards, to make sure that those changes don't happen. And I think the third one is to make sure that it can be put into the day-to-day straight away. So I'm sure you all know that, as time goes on, what you've learned fades. Within 2 weeks, the percentages just stop dropping down. So, if you're going to be training strat planning, you've got to be a strat planning process. If you're about to learn how to write better briefs, you're about to brief, so that you can get that live, actionable learning happening straight away. And I would always say, what are the prompts as well? So, it's all very well saying, we want to fill out this template. Well, are you putting that with prompts of questions to remind them what needs to go in there? Because no one's going to get out their training deck. I'm sure some people do. I would have been one of those geeks that did, but not everybody. So what are those training prompts, those questions to ask, those questions to consider, an example of what best in class looks like to aid and remind as they go through that process. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that support, that can someone check, have I got this? Are we there? What's the refinement? Because no one learns how to do something in a 2-day training course and comes out an expert. I'd love to meet them if they are.
Yeah, we had that just recently. We've just about 2 weeks ago. We do a lot of training with universities. We've got quite a few university clients, and we've been booked in for 3 sessions, I think. And we turned up for the first. Will and I were delivering it and it was to train academics in how to use social media, like for personal branding and to like increase awareness of their own person. Because academics have got amazing stats and opinions, and to use that as for themselves and for the wider institution that they're working for. And academics, though, often think they're smarter than marketeurs, so they won't turn up. And yet the ones that did turn up give you like 10 out of 10 because we were showing them how to maximize LinkedIn profiles and how to get more visibility, how to get interviews off the back of your research. It turns out that the people that didn't attend are now attending the next one, so because they heard what the other ones were doing on their profiles. So yeah, I know what you mean. Though learning fade is an issue with training. But the good thing about training, I think, is I have to say on our training, if we meet somebody, is like marketing people or whoever it is, I'll say like, if you could take, 1 or 2 things from this training, these are the 2 or 2 or 3, usually 3, isn't it? Everything's the power of 3.
Well,
if you could take 3 things from today, it's this, and if what is it? You tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, and then you tell them what you've told them. That's what they say, isn't it, for training? So I think that's a good thing. And you talked there about people making mistakes. Obviously, our show is about marketing mistakes. We've interviewed 60-ish people anyway, and each person's got a different mistake. And you've told us to think about a strapline mistake.
So I was working for this company, and I was the local market. And so the head office were developing campaign ideas. They would come up with a new product. They would say, here's some campaign asset materials for you to use in local market. Now, if I was to give percentages, I would say 80% of the time they weren't relevant for the local market anyways, which was a big drain on our budget because we'd always have to then create new assets that were relevant to our local market, whilst also trying to appease and keep with the look and feel of the global brand. And I had a situation where I got this strapline come through, and bearing in mind this was for, without giving the brand away, a consumer durables product. And so I get these assets through, and it says, because you never know where your next loose screw will be. And I just sat there. And
okay.
I'm glad you're laughing, but I just sat there and I just thought, every time we weren't using the European campaign or the global campaign, we always had to kind of rationale as to why. And I just thought, this isn't one that I can drop back on an email. I can't say, the imagery isn't relevant for our target consumer, or, whatever it may be. So off to head office I went, and I thought, I'm going to have the conversation. And I played this over and over in my head about how am I going to explain it. And I just kind of got to the place where I'm just going to have to tell them. And I had to break it down. So I literally had to sit there, and a colleague who worked with me, we went together like in force, and she watched me squirm as I explained why loose was inappropriate, the cultural terms around that, why screw was inappropriate and the terms around that, why the imagery was inappropriate, because I think it was also a snooker table as well. It was just the nuances around that. And it was the most cringiest thing I think I've ever had to do, to a different culture as well. So not even a Brit telling a Brit, a Brit explaining to another culture. And, we laugh at it now, but at the time it was multifaceted. It was like, I'm trying to do the best job I can to constantly explain what the needs are in the local markets so they can get fed in. Cultural nuances cannot be sent on an email. It's very hard to be able to do that and for you to get a feel. In fact, I went to a talk yesterday where someone was giving a talk about the 5 British isms to companies that were looking to enter into the UK. And, the way in which we do humour, the way in which, all the things that we talk about, how our mindset is very different to a lot of other cultures. And, people like to cluster us in the European thing, but we're different to the rest of Europeans as well, if we're honest with ourselves. So, the ability to really connect with consumers, I would say never a mistake, always a learning. I think, yes, did they get that wrong? Yes. Did they fully understand the local market? No. Is it our job as a local market to really get them to also understand cultural references? Yes. Did I think that I was going to have to explain that? No. Yeah, that was the one that I thought of when you asked me the question.
Awkward is the word I would think. Yeah,
it was very awkward. I can still, even to this day, I can still remember the table I was sat at, the dividers in the office of where we sat, thinking, is this going to be private enough? Because I don't want them to feel embarrassed when I then tell all of it. I still remember to this day.
Oh, you're on mute, Will.
Have we just triggered you by getting you to...
You taking
Sorry about that.
From the head office, and I was and my colleague sitting there, actually, almost geeing me on through her eyes, go on, do it.
Something completely different that I thought our listeners might be quite interested in. You're an awards judge, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah. I think a lot of people listening to this will be writing awards on behalf of themselves or on behalf of their clients, and it takes ages, doesn't it? And I think sometimes if you understand the kind of the winning formula, you can get really good at it, because often it's not the best work that wins, it's the best award entry that wins, in my view. Obviously you need good work that delivers great results, but there is a kind of an art and a craft to writing a compelling award entry. From your perspective then as a judge, do you want to kind of break down those award entries that really cut through and get your attention?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, when I'm looking at award submissions, I'm looking at a few things. I think the first thing is, was the objective clear from the offset? I can spot a mile off an award entry that's been retrofitted, where someone's gone, that was a really great piece of work. Should we put a submission in? And they're trying to pull those effectiveness scores together. Oh, it had some reach and some opportunities to see, and here's some sentiments. That wasn't part of the original scope. So real clarity that this was the problem. They're able to tell you the problem, the challenge for the brand or for the business. They are able to tell you their approach, what that smart objective was, what was the movement that they were looking to make, how they innovatively, and I use the word innovatively, campaigns that have been done in their approach time and time again. I remember reviewing quite a few award submissions on one round, and they were all very much, we took a product, we gave it to an influencer, the influencer Max shared the product and we got this reach. That's not innovative. That's day to day, right? And it's also not a campaign. And it's also, you can't put an award submission in for something that's not a campaign. But if you want to put real, what I call karate chops around the movement that you are saying, this is what we aim to do, we were here and we wanted to get there, then day to day interactions with our social media plan isn't something that is innovative. Being really clear about what it was that you did differently, showing that you've got real understanding of the challenges, the market, the dynamic, your competitors, why you chose what you chose, the evidence, and then the results that are linked to your objectives. Don't tell me about reach if your objective is all about consideration. Or make sure they're married. Make sure that they're married. So that's what I'm always looking for in an award submission. And always, as you say, it's not always great work. It's great submission. I would say it's both. And I'm also then sense checking. So usually when we're doing as award judge, what usually happens is you see the submissions, you do your independent scoring, and then you come to a panel and you'll discuss your scoring. And often you have to, one panel that I'm on, always have to, the person who scored that person across the criteria, so also understand the criteria of what the people are scoring against, scored high, scored low, we'll have a debate and other people will chip in. So, give something in that award submission that's going to really give the person that is trying to endorse you on that panel the thing to hang your hat on. Like, why was this different? Why was this so revolutionary? Why was this new for the category or for the market or for the product sector in which you are submitting this for? And because sometimes a award can be written really well and it might score across those criteria, but we're also sense checking and going, of all the submissions, is this also a piece of work that needs to be rewarded in our industry so that other people can see what best in class looks like? Was this new? Was this innovative? Did this show new thinking? Did this show real insight? And that's always the sense checker. So even if you don't get it through on the scores, you might get it through on the endorsement. And if you don't get it through on the endorsement, you might get it through on the new approaches.
That's really, that made me laugh actually about the kind of back rationalizing on the objectives. I think we've all been tempted to do that, shall we say. But, it's about not entering awards as well as entering them, isn't it? And I think people naturally want to enter loads of awards, but actually you do need to be innovative and different and have solved a business problem. Otherwise, you're not going to win, are you? You're not going to get shortlisted.
And I think if you are going to submit them, and often in some instances they have a fee associated for submitting them, then do them properly. Like, of all the ones that I see, let's just say I get 20 per category and I have to go through all of them. But there are those that you can see someone's put their heart and soul in, and then there's someone you can see that was either removed from it or not motivated by it, and they're missing bits, or they've done one sentence, or they've put some bits in one box and not in the right box. Like, take the time, not only to make it easier, but if you feel rushed to do it, then you probably don't want it enough.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of awards entries we've written over the years, I think Will's been quite honest there. I've seen him retrofit a couple, but then I've seen ones that have done.
That's not true. I've been tempted. True. I've never done it.
I've got a question. It's to do because of the values thing you were talking about.
Yeah.
And your own values, which is good. How the hell do you, as a marketer, I've never sat down and gone, right, I mean, I know we've done our company values, but are you talking about personal values as well as that person?
Personal values, yes. And I mean, how can they define their values? Well, there is a workbook on the Whole Marketer website that helps you to define your values.
Nice plug.
Yeah, not that you teed that up for me, but the process to learn your values is a process of reflection. So it is looking back across your life. It's not just your career, your life as a whole. Looking at, there are many ways to do it, and I kind of merged 3 different approaches into one in the workbook that I give. But one of the exercises is about looking back. So looking back at moments in your life where things were your absolute best or your absolute worst, trying to use the ones where they really came to you, and to map themes. So what was happening? Is there consistent themes? But more importantly, it's not what was happening; it was why that was significant for you and what you were getting or losing. So a lot of people would, for example, have on that timeline, maybe they lost somebody, maybe a relationship ended, maybe something wasn't going well at work. They're all common, a relationship broke down. Like, they're all common life events that happen to all of us at some point. And it's not necessarily what was happening in that moment. It's about what were you winning or losing? Were you losing a connection? Were you losing your ability to be your authentic self? Where did you lose the person that you felt like you had a sense of belonging with? So it's really about mapping those things, really getting clear on the things that, the people that are already around you. So what values or things do you believe are important or deem of high importance that people that you really respect possess? And the opposite, people that you don't, what they're doing. And almost often the opposite of what they're doing that really jars with you is your value. For someone that is never telling the truth, they're going to jar with me because one of my values is honesty.
So mine.
So if someone's not telling me their truth, that we're never gonna connect on that level. So almost like that reflection in your interaction and your past lived experiences. And the one thing I'll also say is, it's one thing to name your values, The magic happens when you start to define your values and what they mean to you. So just then, Chris, you're like, yeah, me and honesty are exactly the same. But my definition may be different to your definition. So, honesty for me is about having open, honest conversations with people where they share their truth. To you, it might be a definition maybe around not telling a lie, always doing the right thing, having integrity. Similar spaces, but mean different things to both of us. And then beyond that, even people that have defined them, because I know you're saying not everyone's gone through that process, using them. So actually using them to be your guiding light, using them to be reflective as to why some people you connect with and some people you don't. And use that as a degree of subjectivity, making sure that you set your goals for your year around your values. So, one of my values is growth. So I'm in the process of starting to set my goals because I don't do them in January. I mean, January is enough as it is, right?
Awesome.
So, but things that I'm toying with, like, is a training course that I might go on, or I've started learning the drums. Is my drum kit. That was last year's goal. Like, it doesn't have to be always work related. It can also be life related, but playing to your values. People that things that you spend time on, the organizations that you work for, aligning with at least some of your values, or the role being allowing you to play to some of your values. If I had a role that didn't allow me to grow, that wouldn't be motivating to me. Or if one of my values is connection, if I was working in isolation, and in fact, once I was on a project, not good for me because it just drains. So, you're always looking for like a cup, and every time you do something that doesn't play to your values, something goes out, and every time that you do something that plays to your values, it goes in. So you need to keep doing things to keep that cup full. And it's not just things that don't play to your values, it's just life generally, isn't it? We've got everything that we need to do, and then everything that we end up having to do that we didn't want to have to deal with. But guess what? That's life, and that's adulting. So it's being really mindful and intentional with your values and using them to fill up your cup, to bring your motivation, to define your ideal role, to spend time with the right people, all of those things, and really put them into practice.
Yeah, my wife talks about energy, and people with the right energy and the positive energy and negative energy, people that suck it from you and people that give you energy. That you need to be surrounded by people that give you energy.
Definitely. Radiators and drainers is what I call them. I stole that from Davina McCall, and it's those people that radiate energy and they give you energy from being around them, and those that you've been in a room with them and just absolutely saps you.
Yeah, true. Well, I've got one question, which was about have you ever had any unusual feedback from your training sessions when you're going through this training with marketing professionals? Any unusual feedback? No.
Can't think of any unusual feedback.
That's good.
I think I know why you've asked that question, Chris. Do you remember the feedback we got? And I'm not going to name who from. What was it? Do you remember that? It was spoke too fast, and it is really rude feedback, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I can't remember what they said about us.
Some people you do gel with, and some people you don't. Obviously, like what Abby's just been saying, which is what filling up your cup, positive and negative. I just wondered if. Because a lot of marketing professionals are the same. They're creative people. We're from the PR world, and we always say PR people can't do math, which is true. And there's quite a lot of similarities. So just wondered if you ever got any unusual feedback because of people's values, etc. But maybe not. Okay, fine. Well, you got any more questions?
Yeah, so I was just looking for that feedback, just because it's really funny, isn't it? I'll see if I can find it. It was awful. It was it's really insulting. Anyway, I'll maybe do it.
What I would say though, from a training perspective, is I don't know about you, but you're always in front of a room of people, and often people that you don't know, and or at least I'm assuming that they're trying to figure you out. And as a trainer, we were always taught this to establish credibility, like up front. Why are you the person in the room today? Your background, your experience, straight away, so that there isn't any question about your ability. But the other thing I always do is an exercise called Who's Trying to Figure Me Out? And it really breaks the ice, because instead of them sitting there trying to go, how old is she? Where is she? Why is she doing this? Why is she here? Why her? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, actually, I use it as an exercise to say, so what's your level of depth that you go to when you're trying to figure out a human? Because at the end of the day, as marketers, we're trying to understand the deep-rooted emotional reasons why people do what they do, right? So I'm looking for the kind of questions that they're thinking about me as something new into the room that they potentially went before. And I use that as a good barometer of how deep are they going, but also to just break the ice around, like, get the thing that you've got in your head out. You know, even if it's like, where are my shoes from? Just ask the question so that we can get on with the training. There's nothing in the forefront of your mind.
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yeah, that's the number one thing you want. It's what you want in all your employees and everybody you work with. Curiosity.
100%.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, Abby. If people want to get hold, I've got one last question. So you've been on the show now,
yes,
and we always look for a mistake. If you were us, and this is great because you've interviewed loads of people. So if you were us, who's the next guest you'd have on our show, and why?
I would have Rachel Moss on the podcast, and I would have her on because you like to embrace marketing mistakes, and she gave a very good one on my podcast that she did with me about her time. I won't ruin it, when working for a well-known FMCG brand, and it's a thing that I see happen time and time again to marketers. So I would have her.
Great tip. Tap Rachel up, I think.
I'm intrigued.
I am as well. You've set that one out. Great. If people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to get hold of you, Abby?
They can get hold of me on LinkedIn or via the Whole Marketer website, which is www.thewholemarketer.com.
Yeah, cool. I always say www, but it's like, you don't really need. We used to say it's like that. I don't think anyone says it anymore, do they? They just go straight into the.
Yeah, it's like with email addresses, all lowercase, no gaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Completely. I don't know why we say that, but maybe it's because it's the fear that it won't work for those people that grew up in the world of business. I was saying to someone the other day that, when I started work, email had just come out. We used to practice using it in the office, like send it to our colleague and be like, "Did you get it, Sophie? Did you get it?" And that was internal before it was external, yeah. And the other thing we used to do was send things hard copy, because we used to fax things. And
I used to love faxing.
And we weren't sure they were going to get there, right? So you'd also put it in the post. So it's like, if the fax didn't come through, 2 days later, you'd also get it.
Yeah, my first job in PR was about 1999. God, I'm old. And there were emails, but like The Sun had one email address for the whole everybody at The Sun. Like, that's just an example of one media. All the media, they had one email. But I used to love it. Faxing press releases, so we could do shit, and just saying, and it comes out the other. It was just like an amazing thing. Whereas now, email's not as amazing as fax, I don't think, but it is more accurate and quicker, and it gets there. So that's probably why we use it.
Always wait for that little read report afterwards to make sure it's gone through. Like the anxiety levels, used to sit there and wait and like, it's out, it's gone.
And if it pulled it through like halfway and it went wrong, you had to do it again. So it wasn't cheap either, was it? Fax it
wasn't cheap.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the show.